Bunch of Amateurs has produced some of the most insightful, groundbreaking, and just entertaining football documentaries of all time. Of course, it's mainly known for the Dorking Uncovered series to many, but they've also done some fantastic other non-league and Sunday league football documentaries. This includes the Current Reigns Part 1, the Walton and Hermsham Football Club one, and of course the original Charleswood one. A big thank you to the creator, narrator, and producer of A Bunch of Amateurs, Rich, who gave us his time as we talk about the behind the scenes, the rise of his channel, and what the future holds for them. It's a really interesting interview for those who are fans of Bunch of Amateurs, and if you've never watched it before, please do. It's absolutely fantastic, and also, of course, please leave this video a like. Thank you and enjoy. Rich, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Lovely to see you both.
Bunch of Amateurs, obviously famed for Dorking Uncovered, but it's done so much for non-league football. It's not just Dorking, as I'm sure we're going to go in as well. We've got many other fantastic series I really enjoy. Those who don't know, just go a little bit into A Bunch of Amateurs, what it is, and kind of what you do.
Well, it's a YouTube channel that follows various clubs that non-league level of football. Primarily at the moment, Dorking Wanderers. That's the one that's really taken off. Although I would hasten to add that we started with Charlwood,
Yes.
who were step seven-ish at the time when I started, and they've still got two or three of the biggest episodes that we've ever had. So I'm acutely aware that I think people quite like seeing the lower level that we've covered before. But anyway, we do a weekly documentary on whoever it is that we're following, where we try and tell the story of each game week by having a kind of match of the day approach mixed
Mhm.
with a behind the scenes approach. And my theory is that if we can take storytelling into football, you kind of get a drama as well as a match, if you see what I mean. So that's
Love that.
that's kind
Yeah.
of the ethos of what we try and do. Try and find a storyline that's going on, or more than one story that's going on around the actual gameplay.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fantastic. I think it's so clever. I think that's how all the episodes work. And you're right, because you're getting, we talked about 10, 12 years ago, I don't know if you remember. Remember St. Anta Sports?
Yes.
And remember its coverage of the non-league. I remember how it's totally different to anything at its time, where you had like cameras in dressing rooms. It had, this sort of brought non-league people, non-league football to people. I think Bunch of Amateurs kind of carried on that work in a way. And it's not even just non-league, obviously, with childhood stuff. I remember those early episodes. I've got a lot of years ago to watch them, but yeah, it's yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic, really. So we'll go into the Dorking thing. I guess because, as you say, Childwood did have the most sort of views, but Dorking, if you think of all like the social media channels and like TikToks and all that, that's where some of the big like clips and Mark White. So how did that link with Childwood happen first, actually, and then how did that link with then Dorking happen?
Well, initially we were making a film. I
Mhm.
had the idea. I had this camera, and I thought, right, what can I do with this? And I thought, I know non-league football to a degree. I've filmed some stuff when I was a lot younger, and I spoke to Barks, who was the manager of Charlwood, and he was mad keen. And we thought we'll try and make a film. We'll just film a lot of stuff and see if it cuts
Mhm.
together. COVID happened, and um, it kind of wrecked our plan. But Barks's attitude was, "This is brilliant. This is you've got to embrace this. You know, you've been filming during a time that something that's happened has never happened before." So
Mhm.
we did embrace that, started releasing episodes just for the team to watch, really, during
Mhm.
lockdown. And then we realized that people were watching them and enjoying them. So we started sharing them publicly, and it just
Yeah.
kind of went from there. But we wouldn't have ended up we did a bit of Dorking because I'd been introduced to them by my barber, of all people. And then it was only because Charles got locked down a second time that I said to Mark,
Right.
"Look, I've been doing these weekly episodes with Charwood, but now I can't do them. Can I do them with you?" And Mark's attitude, "Can I swear?"
Yeah.
Mark's attitude was, "Yeah, do what you fucking like, mate." Gave me full access without really thinking about it. I think he kind of forgot I was there, to be honest. He put a
Yeah.
mic on at the start of the game against Hawley Town. Um,
Hmm.
I put some GoPros up, and it just went from there. And I think after a little while, he said to me, "Why am I getting stopped in like Starbucks?" And I said, "Well, we've been putting these clips out on TikTok," which is again Barks' idea. Barks is an
Yeah.
ideas man, and he started putting stuff out on TikTok. And my immediate reaction was, "What are you doing?" Um,
That is everyone's immediate reaction, isn't it? I think we've all gone through.
yeah,
I do content, anything on TikTok, awful. But for putting clips, it's the best out there because you can just go to anyone. It's not
yeah,
necessarily who's
exactly
following you.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the irony is that TikTok have a fund, a creator fund or whatever,
Mm.
creativity fund they call it now. And I'm like, well, I would pay them for
Yeah.
what they've done for us.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
buy that
Mm.
publicity.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a bit mad. But yeah, Mark started getting recognized. That's when he started really taking notice of what I was doing. I think he was back then. I think he was looking at the episodes before they went out, but they were quite short and there wasn't much controversy in there. But then I think we both realized the power of what was
Mm.
happening. And he started taking it a lot more seriously. And started working with me a lot more. So Barks had always been very good at just talking to me when I was holding a camera. Whereas with
Yeah.
Mark, it had always been quite
Mm.
formal. Like if I need to talk to him, I'd get him to sit down or stand there and I'll
Mm.
film an interview. Whereas with Barks, I'd just walk around and he would just start talking to me and giving me content. So Mark started cottoning onto that kind of stuff as well.
Mm.
There's nothing ever fake about any of the people that I film. That's really important to me. And I think people have commented many times on TikTok, this guy plays up for the cameras. And I'm like, no, no, no. If anything, he plays down. Like
Yeah.
Mm.
there's two or three things that have happened when I wasn't filming that you would assume, and they're far crazier than anything that I've ever filmed.
Mm.
He smashed up a tactics board once at Southend when I wasn't there. Um, he absolutely lost his shit with Peter Taylor and got sent off for calling him an old C. And I wasn't there. And what he told me when he sent me the message after the game, like, Rich, you're not going to believe what you missed today. It blew my mind. So yeah,
Like a
he
badge of
does
honor
not
for him,
play up
that
for the,
wasn't it?
Yeah. So,
Sounds like
so
a
it's
badge of honor for him.
yeah,
yeah.
yes.
So it's
I think
almost like
it's
yeah, he actually calms down. Yeah. No, that is.
mm,
I
If
love
anything,
that.
yeah, he can tone it down a little bit for me.
mm.
So yeah, it's a long-winded way of saying that it just kind of fell together more than anything.
Do you think starting out around the time of COVID actually helped your channel grow? Um, of course, interesting times for all. Football stopped, the world stopped for God knows how long, and then
Mm,
getting back in because non-league at a time, especially at Charlwood's level, they were allowed fans, but obviously Dorking weren't, and it was a really interesting, going what happened behind the scenes at these non-league football clubs and how they managed to get around the COVID protocols, and it was really interesting to get that in-depth reaction that you managed to capture. I really fell in love with the Charlwood series, as much as as big as the Dorking one is now. You really hooked me into Charlwood. I mean, I work literally just down the road from Charlwood, so not that I know anything about them, of course, but it was just such a fascinating insight, and Barks as well. What a character he is, and are there similarities between him and Mark White in that respect? Are they similar in the way they manage and the way that they kind of act off the pitch?
there must be something about both of them that attracts me to filming them. Um, I think here and there are similarities, but I think they've got quite different approaches um, in terms of how they deal with man management in particular. Um, I think Barks is probably more. I think Barks's big difference. He reflects quite a bit on how he's come across and what he does, whereas Mark is a lot more. I do what I want. Mark's always been the master of his own domain, as it were. So I think the mentality is quite different. But to go back to your point about COVID, yeah, we wouldn't be here today without COVID. I mean, I'm one of the few people that absolutely loved that year. It went brilliantly for me, even though it completely screwed me professionally. I'd just gone freelance a year or two before, and I'd only just created the business MSF Productions in October with the view to doing freelance video stuff that would finance a bunch of amateurs, and I lost all of my bookings immediately. Just started picking up bookings, weddings, and whatever. So financially, I was totally screwed. But lockdown gave me something to do, something to focus on in terms of my own stuff rather than, what I'd worked for ITV as not freelance for ITV as well. And without that, all I could do is my own stuff. And people such as yourself, we started putting stuff out for people who couldn't watch live football, can watch match a day. And to your point there, Mark maximized the amount of volunteers that he could use to give people something to do. So I think he was allowed whatever it was, 40 volunteers at each home game. And so he found 40 people. We gave 40 people things to do, even if they weren't strictly speaking necessary. So everything that we did at that time seemed to really help people out and give people something to focus on. So yeah, there's a certain irony for me that lockdown, despite kind of killing my my income, absolutely sorted me out professionally. And I had a really good time. I did the thing. I always told myself if ever I went to prison, I'd be the guy that got fit and did loads of press ups and whatever. So I was running every morning, editing in the afternoon, and then having drinks with my mates online in the evening. I love it.
That. I love that.
What
I mean, go on, Tom. Go on, Tom.
I was going to say, there's what was interesting about Charlwood and Dorking as well was both clubs were winning the league at the
I
time,
was about to say
weren't
that.
they?
Yeah, I was about to ask
Sorry,
about that season. Yeah, no, it's
obviously of
mm,
course, the National League South stopped when Dorking looked like they were running away with it, and Charlwood were on the brink of promotion, and then obviously that all stopped.
Yeah.
How was the mood inside the camp there? I mean, I guess you
yes.
must get invested with these clubs as you go on and being there with the camera all season, and you really must get a feel how the whole mood of the clubs are in that
Yeah,
scenario.
it's funny how both teams. I wish with Child, I wish I'd started 1 year earlier because they won the treble. So I started in January 2019 was when I first picked up the camera, and the idea was that I'd fiddle around for a few months and then we'd go properly into the next season. But they won the treble at the end of that season, and Dorking won by about 500 points. They won the Isthmian Prem. So I just kept saying, if only I'd started this at the beginning of the year, we'd have some amazing stuff. But as it turned out, both teams then looked fantastic the following year. Charlwood were top of the table. Dorking were actually in that first year when I started in January and I started filming Dorking little bits here and there in February. Um, that was the year. Oh, I get mixed up. So 2019, yes. So 2019, right? 2019 January onwards, Dorking, yes, were Isthmian Prem. Then they started in the National League South in my first full year with Charlwood, and they started off a bit wobbly, and I filmed them lose 6-0 to Havant, and I was in the dressing room, and the players didn't know who I was, and they're 3-0 down at half time, 6-0 at full time, and I didn't know how to film in a dressing room at that point,
No,
and
I
I'm
imagine it's a bit
standing
awkward.
right in the middle of it. And I keep turning the camera to the players who are like, who is this guy? Mark hadn't introduced me or anything. So that was really tough. But by the end of that season, they were in the playoffs. And I did a bit of kind of secret filming at their playoff games. They got me in as part of their media, and I sat in the stands. I think we just about got away with that, but didn't use it for anything in the end because it didn't make sense. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there. I was totally
Yes.
in
It's all
flashbacks.
right.
What was the question?
There's COVID in general. It ruined those sort of football clubs. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
talking
so yeah,
we
the
had our best
success.
season in COVID, to be
Yeah, the
fair. So,
success they were
Yeah.
having and getting integrated with the teams. Yes, particularly Child at that point. Like I was as heartbroken as Barks about how COVID had messed it up. But the Dorking one for me was a little bit more journalistic, as it were. I saw an opportunity there because I hadn't really ingrained myself with the club. I didn't know the players very well. I didn't want them to get screwed over, but at the same time, I was thinking this is amazing, and I didn't really know what I was doing back then as well as I do now. So if I was filming a season where Dorking were being screwed by the authorities now, the football authorities now, then I'd be able to make a much bigger deal out of it.
mhm.
But back then, I got some really good stuff. I got Mark telling the team, your season's over.
I
I'm sorry,
remember
we've
it.
just been told it's been cancelled. And
Yeah.
actually, I was playing FIFA, I think, at that point. I was playing pro clubs with some guys
I
online.
played so much pro clubs during
Yeah,
lockdown. Ridiculous
pro clubs
amounts.
was we probably played each other.
Yeah, probably.
And I was playing online and was supposed to be playing competitively, and I said to the guy, "Sorry, I've
I
got to
did
go."
as well.
Mark's just the FPL or whatever it was called. Yeah,
Yeah, VFL. VFL.
VFL.
I got a virtual league team of the season and League Two for VFL Rotherham. That
Really?
was my lockdown achievement.
Mate, those were the days, weren't they? And we could focus on that. But I
Yeah,
remember
that's
saying to
right.
the guys, I've got to go. I've just got a text from Mark. Mark had forgotten to tell me that the meeting was happening, and I went as fast as I was allowed to go in a car across to Dorking, and Mark had just started the meeting, and I burst through the door and filmed it, and was so relieved that I did, because that was a big moment. We got some good stuff out of that, but I think I'd be a lot more like emotional about it now, given how close I am to the club.
Yeah, no, it was that was almost like my introduction really into it, because I remember watching bits of the first series and then Dorking I was off and on, but almost like caught up, and it was a really, yeah, they got absolutely done over, and then all of a sudden it did almost create that I want to see the revenge part. I want to see how the club comes back, because Justice, I want them to get promoted, because a lot of clubs, I mean, Truro, who are now in the south as well. I mean, they were in the Southern Premier, weren't they? And they were going to win it and then didn't, and then won it a year or two later, or won the playoffs or whatever. So a lot of clubs, it was really harsh for a lot of football clubs that season. That was really interesting. Also, going into the next season, and we all also with Dorking, it's not been you've not had a mid-table season, have you? Or any other clubs you've
No,
followed? You don't
no.
have. They don't do mid like talking like
Well,
they don't do mid-table at all.
last season technically was, they finished lower
Mm,
mid-table,
yeah.
but that wasn't the story of the season at all. To your
No,
point,
it was.
that
Are they
was
going
a
to stay up
relegation
still?
fight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
which is what I needed. So, um, we've had a cancelled season, a playoff win, a relegation dogfight, a relegation, and now who knows? Mark thinks a championship season, but
It's
we'll
going to be an
see.
interesting one. That
Yeah.
playoff final, when I was following the scores, I was already a big fan of the series by then. I was really happy for Dorking, to be honest, because I think we were following. I was watching thinking, how a bunch of amateurs must be sat there like, could it have been any more perfect in terms of like a video, like any more like film? You couldn't write that playoff final, could you?
No,
You could
it's
not write
nuts.
that.
We back then I didn't really have much of a team. So
Mm,
today I have a WhatsApp group with about, I think there's 12 people in it that
wow,
I can turn to, and there's an availability doc, and we get five
nice.
people working per game. Back then, my wife, my then fiance, no, she was just my girlfriend, Claire, was filming for me. One of my best mates, Greg, was filming for me, and Jack, who was a volunteer back then, was filming for me. And we had to hire some equipment, which I'd never done before, because I wanted to max out the coverage of the game. We got there at like 9 in the morning, and we absolutely blitzed it. Um, the three of them were on the touchline cameras, and
Mm,
they did a fantastic job. All three of them did the best filming you can't tell who was on which camera. They all did such a good job. Um, I didn't have a bench cam at that point, so I don't have much footage of the bench other than my camera, which is it's in the car, the Ronin. Now we have three separate
yeah.
cameras all pointing at the bench to get the different angles and to
Yeah,
make
no,
sure we've got
and
the
you got
coverage.
the one in the goal. I love the one. I wish more football club highlights had the
We've
one
got
in the goal.
six. We've got six in the goals now.
Really?
Yeah, we've got
Wow,
three GoPros on each goal now.
wow.
Two
Football
match
clubs need to take
cams.
note.
Yeah.
Yes, two match.
Are they out of sight of away fans though? Because I know you've had some issues with
Oh
those
yeah.
GoPros in the past.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah. Yeah, at Dorking, it's easy to get them away from the
Mm,
fans, but it's not everywhere. I mean, we were at I mean, the one pool at the start of the season, I was just looking at the footage. I can't believe that their fans left the cameras alone, because they were well
mm,
within reach. And I say to them at the start of the match, guys, you can touch these if you want. I can't stop you. But if you point at yourselves and wave, I'll get home, I'll get angry, and I'll delete that, and no one else will ever see it. So please don't be encouraged into thinking that's a good
mm.
idea. And the pool fans left them totally alone. I was thinking about this today, actually. There's a lot of clubs we're going to go to with smaller grounds. The National League is great because a lot of them are proper stadiums.
Yeah,
There's no
of
way you've got
course, yeah.
stewards and whatever. I think at National League South, it's a lot closer to the pitch.
Mm.
So we may
I
have
think you'll
more
be all right
trouble
at
with that.
Playmore though, to be fair. I think you'll be all right at Playmore.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll talk about Torquay Dorking actually. We'll skip for a little bit. I was noticing earlier that the Torquay episode is one of your, and it's a classic, it's one of your highest viewed. I
Yeah,
mean, that game was mental. I wouldn't, it was a 3-all, but I'd say it was the
yeah.
worst quality 3-all I've ever seen, but
Yeah,
it
that's
was an
fair.
incredible watch.
That's
Also,
fair.
it helped with obviously the Torquay, a few of the Torquay fans and Mark White, that helped as well. But that day, obviously, so don't have to go into it too much, but it's no secret that the club of the old regime was not very welcoming towards a bunch of amateurs. It's actually thanks to one brilliant staff member who we all know is Dommy, who's still there, who helped you that day. Talking a little about that day and what it was like.
It was a strange experience, that one. I actually remembered that this morning when I was messaging you guys. Um, I was I was on the way before I got permission. Like I gambled that they were going to let me in. I
Mm.
think mainly because there's no
We put a
reason
fuss,
not
I
to.
think. I think a lot of the fans put a bit of a fuss. As soon
Mm.
as you did a
Right.
tweet, I remember a lot of our fans talking talk. We put a bit of a fuss, and then eventually you allow one camera or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I took all of the gear down with me. I think we went the night before and stayed
Yeah,
stayed in a hotel. And to my mind, there's no logical reason to not let us in. Now, I don't.
Mm.
I had this conversation with the guy at Aldershot, and we'd had this big tweet go out with Luke Moore upsetting their fans and winding them up, and I was concerned that Aldershot wouldn't like
mm,
us because of that. And I said to him after I was in the ground, like, I'm not. I was surprised you were okay with this, and he said, "Well, we'd have got so much stick if we didn't." And I don't
yeah,
quite like that. I don't want clubs to feel bullied into letting us in.
mm,
I want them to think it's a good idea to let us in because we're going to give them good coverage. We
yeah,
very rarely mock anybody or take the mick out of any team that lets us in. We try and show the ground off. We try and talk to the fans and whatever,
yeah,
and we stay out of the way of the Oppo management if they want us to. We respect the pitch. We never cut the corners across the pitch. We do everything we can to keep them happy.
mm,
So, to my mind, there's no reason to not let us in. So I remember driving down there thinking we should be okay. And Don was calling me to let me know, to give me updates, and eventually said it's okay. But because I couldn't guarantee we were getting in, I couldn't bring anybody with me. So I couldn't bring Greg or Jack or anyone. I drove down there, and I think as soon as I got there, I filmed the ground on the outside because I knew I'd struggle the next day. Um, or was it that evening? I'm getting, was it? It was an evening game, wasn't it?
yeah. It was
Was
an
it?
evening,
The
Tuesday
Tuesday,
night.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
Tuesday
So
night,
that's
yeah.
right. I went down during the day, did that filming, went, they wouldn't let me in at that point. So I went back to the hotel, did some filming there. Then we all went to the ground. And I remember going to reception and being asked, just saying, can I go in? I need to go and set up in the dressing room. And the receptionist was really, really rude to me. There was another guy, I don't know who they were. They were both very unpleasant to me. And I was like, look, you told me I'm allowed in. Um, Eventually, Don came out and was very, very helpful. Showed me around to the main entrance, and they still wouldn't let me in until I think it was 6:45, which is when the players were arriving. So I ended up, that was after the players arrived. So I had the players sneaked me in. They surrounded me and all walked in, and they were like hiding my cameras so that I could get in time to put the GoPros up. And I remember stressing Mark out a bit because he was about to start his team talk, and I was losing my shit trying to get the goat, and they wouldn't work, they wouldn't turn on. And Mark was like, "You all right, Rich?" And I was like, "No, I'm fucking furious." And he was like, "Chill, man, everything's okay." And I could tell like I'm bringing tension into a dressing room, which I shouldn't do. So I had to calm down. I got them going, and I got out of there. And Dom put me in a spot which actually really, I was a bit concerned, but it's a really nice spot. I got a good angle on the bench, so I
mm,
could lock a camera off a mark. I got a decent angle on the pitch, but without GoPros, there was no coverage, so I couldn't afford to miss anything. So I had to be
mm.
right on it with that camera because if I missed something, we wouldn't be able to tell that part of the story. Unfortunately, I got away with it. I didn't mess anything up on the day. So,
Mm.
yeah,
How
it
was
was
our how did our first goal look though, Rich?
I can't remember your first goal.
Was that the score? I can't remember. There's
That
a.
was down the other end from
It
me,
was,
wasn't
yeah.
it? I
Keeper, I
It's
remember,
think the keeper threw it out and we stole
Yeah,
it
it
and
was a
of
scored from
gift.
course,
there.
yes,
And
of
oh yeah, Dorking
course.
scored a classic that game, weren't they? From
Well,
about
it
just
was a
after half
flecky.
time.
Nick Wheeler would never allow anyone to admit it, but it was definitely a flecky. I saw that from a different angle. I think I looked at your angle, the Torquay angle from the other side, and yeah, definitely flecky. Yeah, your one was a giveaway, and
Yeah.
I think that my camera, I was a bit confused as to where the ball had gone, so I nearly missed that one, but I did catch it in the end.
I love those angles when they're on the, like the side of the pitch. If you had to almost like give advice to a football club who wants to like film, I believe the best ones having obviously the big camera that's stationary and gets everything at the top. But I also think football clubs should have this sort of side angle. I think you see so much more, don't you?
Yeah, I remember the first time with my dad that we sat down the front at Charlton, and I remember such a total difference in appreciation for footballers
Mm,
when I sat up close and
yeah,
you saw them take a touch, only get a second on the ball before they get, smacked. You don't see that when you've got a wide. You don't
not
see
at
it on
all.
TV, and you
Not
don't
at
see it when
all.
you're
I'm
sitting up in the
totally with
stand.
you. Like when you go to like Premier League Championship, it's a totally. I've grown up watched Torquay based my whole life. But the odd chance I've gone to like a Leicester or Southampton game,
Mm,
which from Leicester and all that, and I've got funny sports Southampton. And when you actually watch it in person, you're like, oh, especially up close, it's totally different. The
yeah.
standard is incredible. It's like
Yes, it's
chess.
ferocious, it's fast, and they get no time to think or take
Mm,
any touches. And
Mm.
so I kind of want to capture that. I'm also there's a World Cup film called Hero World Cup '86, and
mhm.
I've been ripping that off my entire life. Um, it's a lot of low angles, it's a lot of pitch level stuff. They shot, so they've got an incredible shot of Maradona, but it's just here upwards as he
Mm,
goes on the slaloming run, goes
yeah,
around the keeper and scores, and you can't see the ball. You don't see the ball once. You just see
yeah,
his upper body, and then he falls. Then he gets up and runs. Then you see the wide shot, and I've been copying that ever since. I think that's a brilliant way of doing it. I think
yeah. I
it's
love it.
intimate and it's filmic as well. So I tell the guys when they join the team that they've got to watch that because that's what we're
It's
aping
just
basically all
there's
the
just something
time.
so authentic about that as well. Like it just really brings home like football is just it's
Mm.
not just the Premier League,
It's
it's
not a
not just the
TV
Championship,
program.
it's not just a TV program. And I think what you guys do especially well is just the way you broadcast everything out and the way you videos and stuff, and it really makes you feel like you're there or a part of it. And I think you do really well in grasping that aspect of the beautiful game.
Yeah,
One thing I'd
I think
like,
Mark deserves a lot of credit for that because the freedom he gives me, and Barks as
Yeah,
well, and Josh as well at Rains Park, um, they put a lot of trust into us, um, and a lot of freedom. Josh takes very little out of the Rains Park episodes. Mark takes bits out here and there.
yeah.
Barks took out all of the tactical stuff. He didn't want to give it
Of
away.
course. I was
At
yeah,
that
thinking that
level,
at
it's different,
times. I was thinking that at times. I was like, because obviously the tactical points there, like me and Mark will end up in a conversation about 3-5-2s when he was on. And I thought,
Yeah,
oh, it's just open like that. But at the same time, it could easily be, other clubs are watching and getting that insight. But I think again with the angles, I remember when I rewatched the Torquay 3, Dorking 3, Torquay 2. Horrendous night for Torquay. But I think obviously I watched it on the stream,
Mm,
Tom was there. But like you saw like your own club, and this is the beauty of why it's important that you're allowed in for fans of other clubs. We
Mm,
saw our players from a different view that night. We saw it from like what an opposition maybe thinks more.
yeah,
I know you're quite neutral with your commentary, which I want to move on to. Is
mm,
brilliant, I think.
yeah,
Your narration, and I think we saw like, a body language thing of like you wouldn't normally see, and just
right.
because you kind of see football very quickly when you're on the side. But one thing seeing it in like like a replay of that. So I think it's a very interesting insight. And as you say, especially the lower ones, not many clubs would get that kind of view from a big audience. So I think it's great. Your narration then, was it kind of like it's my idea, let's give it a go, and then I'm now doing it, or is it something you're really into? I think you're great at it, and it really adds like the uniqueness of it.
Well, I remember doing a school play and being told you should be on the radio. It was the first time anyone had ever said that to me. Um, and all throughout my career at Sky, I always thought like I didn't work in production at Sky. I worked in online and digital marketing and stuff. And I trained at college in production, and I'd always wanted to do production. And I kind of had this antsy feeling of like I'm not doing what I should be doing, and I had that for over a decade. And I always thought I should do something with my voice because people have been telling me that my whole life. But I'd hired narrators plenty of times in my work, and I knew how competitive the landscape was, how hard
Mhm.
it is to get work, um, and I just never bothered. So when Barks said to me, "Let's put some episodes out," I said, "Look, our storytelling isn't strong enough visually. My preference, if I was to make a documentary, would be to have no narration, to let the visuals do the talking, show don't tell, and so on." But we didn't have enough coverage for that. So Barks said, I said we need to do a narrator. Barks suggested like three different people. I got quite put out because I was like, no, I think this should be me. So I
mm,
did it. And I remember the very first time I did it, and it's horrendously, it's still online. I think it's Charwood Series 2 because it's the first one that we put out. I just watched the Tom Hardy one on All or Nothing when he did Spurs.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of aped that for the first few episodes. I wanted to get away from my own voice. I didn't want my friends to
It's
laugh
weird
at.
hearing your own voice, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't want
Yeah.
my friends to laugh at me, and I didn't want to hear my own voice. So I did it in a different voice, and it is one of the worst things I've ever done. I wish I could delete those episodes. But after a while, I just started thinking, well, sod it, I'm going to own this. If
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing the talking, I'll do the talking. And I've gotten totally used to editing my own voice.
Yeah, you do
I
after
can,
time, don't you?
yes, I can
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
when it's flat or
Yeah.
if I haven't nailed something. I can be fairly objective about it. So I think that's probably my biggest advantage is I'm able to listen to my own voice and go, that was crap. Or actually that was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no,
You
I
know,
think that's
so
really good.
Yeah.
I love that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think as well, sometimes you've done episodes in the past, and I don't know what your turnaround time is from recording games to getting them published. But I guess you must work or
The
edit
hours you
quite
put
late
in
into the
must be
night.
mad.
Yeah, I
There's some
do.
episodes that have made me
Yeah.
laugh in the past where you're trying to say something, you mess up, and it's like,
It's
oh,
like
just
2 in the
kidding, I don't
morning.
care. It's just
I
like,
do
yeah,
this in
that's
the
great.
morning. I
But
do it
it's
when I
so
get up.
relatable as well. I just think it just brings that extra dynamic to the channel, and I
You
think it's
do.
just
Yeah, I
wonderful.
think it
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, we stumbled across that stuff. Like, I still tell myself I'm making this episode for the players and for my mates. You know,
Hmm.
I don't think about it in bigger terms than that. So sometimes people comment saying you should keep your politics out of it, or that joke wasn't very funny. I'm like, I don't give a shit. As far as
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
concerned,
Yeah.
if my mate Speedy likes it, then I'm happy.
Mm.
So that's the mindset that I still have
I
for
love
I'm
that
totally with you on that.
I love how you always have a look. You can always put a sly dig on some of the
Yeah.
players as well, and just laugh it off as well. I think that's hilarious as
yeah.
well.
Well, there's an ongoing like joke between me and Niall. First time I see Niall on any day, he'll just take the mick out of the way I look, whether it's my hat or my face or my weight or whatever. But me and Niall, like we're on the night out after pool, we can chat for ages. We've got
Hmm.
very similar
Yeah,
views on
that's great.
politics and life and stuff. So none of that's real. I remember someone saying, because I'm always joking about Josh Taylor being too handsome and someone being really annoyed at me about not liking Josh Taylor. And me and Josh had a right laugh about that because they're just running jokes.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, I
a
love
running
that.
joke makes life
I love
nice and
that. Yeah.
easy. But yeah, I mean, I work a lot of hours to do this. So our turnaround this season's going to be a lot shorter. I preferred
Mm.
having a big gap for a few reasons, mainly because it helps me figure out if I'm doing
New
something three
ideas.
months
Yeah.
ago, I
Mhm.
know I should include this because that's going to be relevant in a couple of months' time. But the drawback is probably interest and traffic, and we saw a massive drop in viewing numbers when the day that Dorking got relegated. You can see on a graph our views just go
Yeah.
down because
Mm.
people were just like, "Oh, that's sad. I don't want to put myself through that."
I was
So
a bit like that. I can't lie to you.
yeah,
I can't lie to you. I only watched that bit today. I saw clips of it on TikTok, but I was generally, I think we've got a lot going on with Talking United as well. But I was generally like,
Mm.
oh, it's quite sad actually. I don't really
yeah,
want to watch Mark
I think
White be sad, to be honest.
yeah,
this is the
yeah.
concern we've got for
Do
Goals
this
Eye
season a
View
bit,
is the
but
fact that people are only watching because we're all going into meltdown because we're just going down and down and down. But if
yeah.
Yeah.
And we
hopefully the
were a
Brink
voice.
Consortium can take us back up, no one will watch us anymore.
And I will take that in a way because obviously we're a fan one that isn't our income. But
Mm.
you're right, Tom. People do like it when it is a bit more sort of going on. But I think this season, let's talk about this season. Obviously, from your point of view, it's just obviously some of what does with Dorking, but also I think it's going to be a great season in National League South this year for
Mm.
many reasons. What's your obviously we know what the Dorking camp is like. What's your thoughts going into it, especially from like your point of view and like a bunch of amateurs' point of view, with Torquay, with all these teams looking really strong. Could be a really good season for a bunch of amateurs though.
Yes, I think well just to go back to your point, I think it's relevant to the previous point about seeing the success and seeing the
Mm,
failure. Mark was worried that people didn't want to see the failure, and he's excited about this season because we
mm.
should have a lot of wins. I think it's interesting that Sunderland Till I Die
It's all about
showed
failure. Yeah,
all about failure, but
yeah,
you watch that objectively because it's 99% of people watching it are not Sunderland fans. I think what
yeah,
we've difference with us is we've made people fans of Dorking, and it's that same feeling. You don't want to watch your team on match of the
yeah,
day when they've
yeah,
lost.
yeah.
Um, and so that's negatively affected us in a way that, say, Burnley have got a new series coming out,
Mm,
and I think loads of people are going to want to watch that to see what that dressing room was like in an
yeah,
abject failure of a season
yeah,
because they're not
Mm.
Burnley fans. It's not going to hurt them. So this season we're excited because we're hoping. I'm excited for a few reasons. Firstly, we're going to go to a lot of grounds we've not been to before. We're going to find a lot of players and we're going to find out about a league that has changed quite a bit since we were
Yeah, it's a
last there.
lot. It's a
A lot
lot.
of different
Yeah.
teams.
Yeah.
Potentially, like I'm, Mark is confident and he has got a fantastic squad.
He
And
has.
bizarrely, it's nearly fully fit, which never happens.
Wow.
So going into the season, and we're discussing this today at training, the first few games are not gonna be particularly telling of how the season's gonna go. I'd imagine Truro are gonna be so up for it on Saturday. If Dorking don't win that, it reminds me, I'm a Charlton fan. I remember our first game back in the Championship after the relegation, we lost to Fulham. We won the league by like 50 points or something.
Yeah.
But that first game worries you because, oh God, we weren't that good. It will take a while to settle down, but then I think Dorking's quality of squad is really going to ramp it up. Admittedly, I don't know much about a lot of the other teams. There's a few that I do. You guys, I know a bit about Maidstone. But I think there's going to be a couple of teams that emerge that we're not going to see coming. And that's going to be exciting for us. I don't want it to be a walk in the park for Dorking from a BOA perspective. I want there to be a bit more. If Dorking won every single game, I think our viewing figures would plateau as well. I think we need adversity. We need some controversy.
You need a title fight with Torquay United. That's what you need.
Yeah, a title
That's it.
fight.
That's it.
I mean, that's partly what drove on season 2 was that fight with Maidstone to get the title, and Dorking not making it was perfect because then there's the Supreme Ordeal when they don't make it, then they come back and the whole storytelling thing, return with the elixir and whatever, they then win it was perfect for us. So we need something a bit more like that really, to give the show a twist. But it looks like we're going to film, if the clubs let us in, we're going to film pretty much every game this year.
That's great. Yeah,
that'd be great.
And we're going to go out on the memberships. We're going to go out within 2 weeks. So
speak to us about memberships, actually, for those who don't know, because you have YouTube ones. You have Patreon as well.
Yeah, so Patreon and YouTube memberships mean that you can watch super extended episodes.
Yeah.
There's a super cut it could be anywhere up to an hour and a half long for an episode. So that's for the people that just want to watch more and more. I know there's shows that I've watched in the past where I'm like, give it to me. I'll watch this all day. And then there's the standard cuts, which are more popular because they're a little bit tighter. That's like £3 a month or something. And then we're going to do the free episodes will be out 3 weeks after the event, which is still 12 weeks fewer than we're used to.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tight turnaround for me and Jack to make these episodes, but we're excited about it. But yeah, if we're going to keep going, we've got to have people on memberships because of how much it costs to make the show.
Yeah.
And I want to stay independent. I don't want to sell it to anybody.
Yeah.
It'd have to be a big offer, and we'd still have to have full creative control if someone else was to come in and buy it off of us. So we're kind of hoping that the viewers and the fans will support us to help make it really, which is asking a lot because people spend a lot on subscriptions to lots of different channels and get a lot more than they get from us. But the difference with us, hopefully, is it's a bit more personal, and a bit more meaningful. So we're going to start doing stuff like shout outs to our patrons and members and stuff, and try and make people feel like we're also going to do, if you go we're going to come up with a new tier, £10 a month, and you can get personalized happy birthday messages from Mark. That's the plan.
Swanee's there. Done. That's it. Swanee's there.
Yeah.
I love that. I think because I don't watch them as much now, but a couple of years ago I watched a lot of comedy podcasts. I Have a Words and all those sort of ones, and they very much went to a Patreon sort of model, and it does really work because I think as well, like there's Green Room Pod as well, and they would have it where you have your public episodes and then you have your patrons. You always thought the patrons were a little bit more kind of for you, and I'm definitely behind that. Much more personally said. I mean, from a comedian's point of view, it could be a bit more offensive probably on those if it's a dark humor podcast. But does that make sense?
That's true.
You have that more personal, that personal touch. So Patreon's really a fantastic platform for artists.
Yeah, and I need to include those guys more. I think I listened to a couple of podcasts. There's Smallville's podcast from the old Superman show, Talkville. They do a fantastic job of bringing the patrons into the show. They have a guest on once a week. We're going to try and find ways of doing stuff like that.
Of course,
We're ramping up the output for members this year. Last year, I'm desperately trying to get this stuff out. This year, it's more a case of if Jack's helping me do the main show, I'm going to be able to give the members a lot more stuff. Which I'm really hoping we can pull off.
Good luck with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Rich, can I just ask briefly from a Torquay perspective, have you heard any news about whether they're going to let you in to play more this season? That's the big question on all Torquay fans' lips at the moment, I'm sure.
It's looking good. Yeah, we got a message today that was pretty promising. It's not a guarantee of entry, but it seems pretty promising. So it's being talked about in the corridors of power there. But yes, I'm expecting a yes at the
That's
moment.
great.
So
That's
yeah, very
great. I'm
promising.
sure that that's going to be a crazy,
Um,
to have that high quality of game, hopefully at the
yeah.
start of the season is going to be brilliant.
I think
Yeah,
what's
dying
important
to
as well
find
is
out.
it's a great
Mm.
opportunity, and I know the new chairman think exactly the same. It's a great opportunity to show what this new consortium and the
Yeah,
new Torquay United is all about, and to showcase it to the world that we are a football club that has changed for the better. Those who have done the club wrong are gone, and it's just bright on future from here. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to advertise that to the world that Torquay United are back, baby, and we're just looking forward to having such a great
well,
season.
off the
And
pitch, just need to make sure we're on the pitch as
yeah,
well.
yeah, on the
Obviously,
pitch.
yeah.
Do
Yeah,
you
I
have
mean
any
that's
I was just going to ask
go on.
quickly before we move on. Did you have any clubs where they allowed you in, but you had huge issues where you couldn't release any episodes? There's one that I think sticks to mind, but
Um, yes, I mean, yes, there's the Maidenhead episode, was a nightmare for us. And I think I learned a lesson from that actually, because we did eventually put the episode out, and I regret doing that because to Mark's point, so Mark always tells me what he thinks about what I do. And he doesn't try and interfere, but he will tell me his opinion, and he will say like it's your call, but this is what I think. And I very, very rarely disagree with him on this stuff. Actually, he does speak a lot of sense, and I think on the Maidenhead one, um, that was tough because they'd fully agreed to everything. And I'd sent them all the details in advance. But on the day, we were an hour into the shoot when we got told, actually, you can't do all of this, got to take it all down. And then they tried to kick us out at half time. So I did eventually turn that into a special episode last summer, I think it probably was. And you know what? It was just a bit too bitchy. It was a bit too moany, and I don't want to be perceived. I don't want the
Mhm.
show to be perceived as being as to having an axe to grind with anybody.
mm,
And that you know, as you were saying about coming back to Torquay, a changed club, I would embrace the positives of that with an edit. I
Mhm.
wouldn't moan about what happened before. We
Yeah,
actually got a good shoot and a good episode. Like you say, got a lot of views for that. It was a
yeah,
great game and it all worked out. So I wouldn't focus on the negatives. I would like to use that to say, look at the positives as what's happened there. The people coming in. The Oldham episode, I think, is a great example of how I would treat
yeah.
that
It's
because
amazing.
when we
Yeah,
went to Oldham the first time and we met Frank Rothwell for the first time, it was really fun to say, look at how happy all of these people are after
mm.
years of misery. Um, and we would want to embrace that and show that. And like I said earlier, it's an opportunity for clubs to present themselves in a positive light and for me to
Of
present
course it
them in a
is.
positive
Yeah.
light.
yeah,
I love that. No, that's fine. Well, just before we go, I mean, thank you so much for your time. It's been brilliant.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
What is the sort of, you kind of go on it, what is the sort of the future for like Bunch of Hammers? Is it basically carry on going, let's enjoy it, let's see where it goes, or do you have it like mapped out that you want to go to this level? Or is just follow Dorking, follow the other clubs you've got?
Sam,
Um,
I have a big mouth. It's partly why I ended up in this job, funnily enough, in a weird sort of way. Yes, we've got an idea. We had an away day, me, Barks, Greg, Jack, a couple of the guys that are in the team. We had an away day, a few drinks, and we sat and talked about what we think the future should be. Um, at the moment, we don't have a deal with Rains Park. If they come and make an offer, then we're interested, but we're kind of on the fence because focusing on Dorking is a great opportunity for us to really nail the next season. If me and Jack are doing that full time,
mhm.
if we were to do a second team this year, we would we would bank the content and release a box set at the end of the
Yeah,
season.
okay.
So
mhm,
we'd like to do a proper 10-part documentary, like the big channels like Netflix do. Um, but if not, then we'll just focus on Dorking. After that, yes, we do have a plan to get Barks back involved. We
Mhm.
It will basically be Sunday League, and it would effectively be our own football team.
Wow,
And we'll
love
we will
that.
do the Palmers FC SC Dons thing.
that's
Um,
amazing.
and
So
Barks
much
is really
potential could come out of
interested.
that.
Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like
so much can come out of that.
we still get more people talking to us about Adam Lippett's couple of bottles of wine comment than we do about Mark. So I really want to tap back into the level of football that most of us can remember or ever aspired to.
Mm.
Dorking was a happy accident, but it's a level of football that doesn't really suit the name bunch of amateurs. So
Yeah.
I would
Ah,
like to get back to
yeah.
Sunday League and whatever. And I think there's a good chance that we'll create a team of our own and do it that way. And then the world will be our own oyster because we can do what we want. It's our club.
Mm.
Yeah,
We
get
won't
on
answer
that.
to anybody.
Yeah.
I'll do a
I
football
must I
manager
must
series of
ask
it, and it'll be right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
must ask briefly the obvious question. How did the name Bunch of Amateurs come about?
Yeah,
Can't remember. I know I came up with it, and Barks wasn't keen on it. I remember that. He might deny that now. If he's listening, he'll probably get a text from him when this goes out. It was originally called For the Love of the Game when it was a film, and then at some point, I think because that was a Kevin Costner movie. At some point, bunch of amateurs popped into my head. I think I wrote a list down. I think I just wrote a
mm.
list of
Naming
ideas.
things is the
That was the one that
hardest
stuck out.
thing out there, isn't
Really
it?
hard.
I hate it. Like naming bands in the past, naming projects,
Yeah,
podcasts. Oh, it's ridiculous.
yeah, totally. And I still try and think of names for my band when we were 16, and I still can't come up with a good name. That was a long time, maybe 30 years ago. I think it was just off a list and it stuck. And I remember I'm a big REM fan, and I remember REM saying that they got it out of a dictionary and they just wanted it to look good on a poster, nice
Yeah,
and simple and big letters. And I remember
yeah,
thinking BOA fits
it
that,
does.
and we can come up with a decent logo for that. So yeah, it just stuck. I actually got really annoyed when a documentary came out about actors last year, and they called
Mm.
it A Bunch of Amateurs, and it screwed my SEO and it screwed their SEO. And I sent them a message going, "Why did you do that? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't do any of this." I can't argue. There is the Ian Hislop play Bunch of Amateurs, which came out before me, so I can't really complain. But
Hmm.
to come out with a documentary and call it Bunch of Amateurs when clearly that's going to mess
Taken.
up their own
Yeah.
ability to promote the
Yeah, I
documentary, it
know,
makes no
because it won't
sense to
catch it
me.
away.
So,
Yeah, no, I totally agree
yeah.
with you on that one.
Anyway, go on.
But yeah, no, that's great. No, I mean it's been incredible. This is all the point of this, like it's all gone south podcast. We find insights of people who have helped the non-league game, and wow, a bunch of amateurs have
Mm.
helped so much and will continue to do so. So yeah, if anyone's watching you have or listening and haven't watched it, please do. Because I go on
Mm.
about enough on Talkie Talk anyway, don't I? But
Rich,
so it would be
how
a
can how
good
can how can
season.
people find you, Rich, on Bunch of Amateurs?
Um, uh, if you Google Bunch of Amateurs
Yeah, it
football,
comes.
you will find it. A lot
Yeah,
of people spell it with a CH. We've noticed our biggest search term is very badly spelt, so you can spell it any way you like. We've put it in the
probably
description
me.
so that people will find it. Yeah, Bunch of Amateurs football, and it will come up.
Yeah, we'll put it in the description to this video as well for the YouTube version. But yeah, there we go. Thank you so much, Rich, for your time, and
I
we'll
really
see everyone
appreciate you
else.
being interested.
All
Thank you.
good, all good, and we'll see you next episode.